This is the story of the one. As a custodial supervisor at a high school, he knows that during cold and flu season, germs spread fast. It's why he partners with Grainger to stay fully stocked on the products and supplies he needs, from tissues to disinfectants to floor scrubbers. All so that he can help students, staff, and teachers stay healthy and focused. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
I haven't listened to anything you've said in the last 20 seconds.
Damn it, Trevor.
Oh, God, I hate you so much.
Well, it's you. We can cross off the reading.
I watch almost everything, and the majority of it is terrible.
What is this podcast about?
My recorder keeps turning off.
Damn it, Trevor. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the third episode of No Win Scenario. How you doing, Trevor?
I'm staying silent for this intro because you told me earlier that I'm being too mean.
You were a meanie butt in one of our recordings, so I said let's do it again.
So I'm gonna just hang back and let you botch this whole opening, and
Well, the third episode, I think at some point we'll get into a nice rhythm where you're the right level of kind of snarky for our listeners. Have you told any of your friends yet about this podcast, Trevor?
I've only told one.
Oh.
I'm waiting until we get some more out there. And,
do they know they're your friend? Have you broken the news to them?
They have no idea. They have no idea whatsoever.
Well, your sourpuss face is not going to distract me. We have a great interview today with Todd Marks. Todd Marks, he is the video and playback supervisor for a whole bunch of movies and shows. We kind of got connected to him through Star Trek Picard. We've had some great interviews with Dave Blass and Liz Klowski, production designer and art directors for Star Trek. So they hooked us up with Todd, and I think we're in for an interesting conversation. He's been around for quite some time and done a lot of stuff, and I think video playback, and it's not something that a lot of people know about on TV shows and films.
Yeah, when you initially mentioned that, people might not get too excited about it. I find it to be absolutely so fantastic and so interesting. It's very, very technical, but you also there has to be an artistic element to it as well, and everything has to be done perfectly, and it is a really intricate job, and Todd is a really great guy.
But that's not what you have in your mind today, because you seem like you woke up sweating and really disturbed that Dune 2 was going to get delayed. The part 2 was going to get delayed. Are you handling that okay?
Yeah, I'm pretty bummed out about it. I think it's really unfortunate, and it's created some holes in the exhibition schedule, especially the premium format and IMAX exhibition, and everybody's rushing to take advantage of it. I personally would have liked if they were going to, when they decided that they were going to push it until the spring, I thought it would have been a great idea to hold on to that IMAX booking that they had for Dune 2 and bring back the first Dune, because so few people got to see it.
The David Lynch Dune?
Get out of here.
I don't know if you know this, Trevor, but I love the David Lynch movie. For those of you not watching, well, Trevor won't let anyone see his face, but Trevor is making a face right now. I think because he agrees with me that he absolutely adores the David Lynch version of Dune that I grew up with.
David Lynch is one of the finest filmmakers.
And Dune is one of the finest films ever. You got Patrick Stewart, you got Sting.
I've met him. I'm a huge fan.
Kyle MacLachlan.
Twin Peaks is my favorite franchise. I just saw a 35mm print of Mulholland Drive a few weeks ago. I'm a very, very, very big fan. I just finished his autobiography a few months ago. Huge fan.
Get to the point.
Not a fan of his version of Dune at all. And you know what? Coincidentally enough, you know who else isn't a fan of that? David Lynch. David Lynch himself is not a fan of it.
Listen, it's not a great movie. It's one of those movies that, you watch as a kid you know, it could be any movie that you watch when you was a kid, you get obsessed with. I watched it like twice a week in middle school. I read the books. I loved seeing it. You know, I think I read Dune the first time in 4th grade. I was a little too young for it, but seeing the movie had it make sense for me. It was big. It was grand. There was a vision there.
God,
maybe not
I want to
good
take
one.
a nap during this. This is such garbage.
Okay,
Like,
but explain this to me. Explain this to me. You've seen the Lynch movie. You have seen the Lynch movie.
I just saw it in a movie theater with you 7 months ago. It was an insufferable experience. One of our local independent theaters played a 35 millimeter print of Lynch's Dune.
Shout out to the Brattle.
Oh my God. Dawn was acting like it was Citizen Kane and Orson Welles. I was sitting there. I took the straw out of my soda cup and I tried to gouge my eyes out during this film. It is an insufferable experience.
Well, 2 things here. First of all, I don't understand. I have an open mind. I like the new Dune.
You absolutely do not have an open mind.
I do not. I will be pleasantly surprised if Christopher Walken as the Emperor works out. I was mind blown that was the casting choice on that one for the Emperor. So we'll see.
I think the casting is
I think
top notch.
They did a disservice to the character of Chani and Zendaya by how they used her in the first film. And I realized it was just teeing it up for the second part.
Everybody,
I think it was a wasted
I want you to
opportunity.
understand, listeners. Dawn thinks, and please, all no offense to her, but Dawn actually thinks that Sean Young's performance in Dune, David Lynch's version, is absolutely fantastic. What he really thinks it's one of the best performances he's ever seen.
No.
Hold
Do not put
on.
words in my mouth.
I'm not putting words in your mouth. I remember these words.
There was more there.
Then you thought it was she's in it for 20 seconds, and that it's a better performance than what Zendaya does in the Villeneuve version. And that, listeners, all the listeners who are listening to this, all 3 of you that are listening and driving right now, you just drove off the road into a tree. This is a ridiculous conclusion. This is why I hate Dawn.
This is not true. Everything he said is a lie. I will also say
that is not a lie.
With the new Dune, granted, I did not see it in IMAX like you did. I was, I think in the middle of COVID, I saw it in a small theater.
Well, I saw it in cropped IMAX. I didn't see it in true IMAX because they were closed for the
I honestly, I really did enjoy the movie. I really did. I honestly did not feel it was as epic in scope as the original.
You're insane.
All the silliness aside, I felt like Arrakeen's felt small. The city felt small. The world felt small.
Your brain is small.
I don't think we're going to agree on this one.
No,
I will say
we haven't. We've been fighting about this for years.
I'm thrilled there's a part 2. I'm thrilled there's talk of Dune Messiah. I'm bummed that he said the other books are too, I don't know if he said esoteric. I would love someone to take on God Emperor of Dune. It's a great book. I think it'd be a wacky movie. I mean, everyone thinks it would be a wacky movie. But I think someone should do it. I mean, there was actually a Dune miniseries on Sci-Fi years ago that was like a staged play. I mean, it looked like it was, shot on like a play. I thought it was a very interesting way of doing Dune and Children of Dune. I'd love to see God Emperor that way. But God Emperor, someone, spoiler alert, turns into a huge thousands-year-old worm, and it's a talking worm that rules the Empire. So I guess there are some logistic challenges with that. But I want to see it.
10 years ago, Dawn, for my birthday, bought me a Blu-ray of David Lynch's Dune. The worst birthday present I've ever received, because he knows how much I hate the film. I immediately, after he left, I ripped open the case, I took the Blu-ray out, I put it in my cat's litter box. The movie sucked so much that my cat wouldn't even go to the bathroom on it. She stopped using the litter box.
You know what, Trevor? I can't think of a better transition to our next segment.
I can't either.
I'd like to apologize to everyone, all of humanity, for Trevor.
I want to apologize for me too, actually.
We're going to work on him, ladies and gentlemen, but please feel free to send all your hate mail to Trevor once again, and all your love and adoration for me to nowinscenariopodcast@gmail.com. That's nowinscenariopodcast@gmail.com, and you can subscribe on everything: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Audible, Spreaker.
Oh my God! You don't even
think
know
I don't
where our
know?
podcast is.
I'm
Spreaker.
Spreaker. and wherever you love podcasts. Stay tuned next for our interview with Todd Marks from Star Trek Picard.
Hi, my name is Todd Marks. I'm a computer video playback supervisor and also a projection mapping specialist. And I've been working in the film and television industry for about 30 years now, professionally. I started shooting videos back in the early 80s and moved to LA in 88 to finish my schooling and then get into the industry, which I was able to do. So that's a little bit about me.
Are there a lot of you out there doing what you do in Hollywood?
There's probably a good handful of top tier playback people. There's a lot of guys. There's a playback, or men and women, playback technicians, playback engineers. There's not a lot who kind of span all the different things that I do, as far as there's some that are very technical. I mix the creative aspects of overseeing the creation of the content and mixing the newer technologies or the appropriate technologies for whatever the project is.
Most people, when they see, in a film or TV show a long list of credits, they might not necessarily see that and understand it. Yeah,
of course. And it's one of those jobs that you can't just go, oh, well, I'm the guy who does this. It used to be kind of, our description was, when you're watching a show and they're looking at a screen, or they have a handheld device, or there's a room full of monitors, I'm in charge of all of that, anything having to do with the display. So being, as somebody who's interacting with a phone, or they're on a bridge of a spaceship, any of that type of work, I'm in charge of. So from taking the script and seeing what the writer has written to describe some action, and then figuring out a way to convey that into graphics, and then bringing in the appropriate technologies, the right type of monitors or displays, to then help tell that story. So I'm a storyteller in one aspect. I'm a technologist in another aspect. And it's a mixing of a lot of different types of skills. And so, sometimes it's just wallpaper in the background that just kind of helps set a tone or a mood, or just helps make you believe that what you're seeing is a real set, or, it doesn't pull you out of what you're watching. It helps pull you in. And there are certain people who just do the technology part. They bring, they have a graphics company, provide all the graphics, and they have nothing to do with what those elements are. There's other people who are just, graphics coordinators. And then there's the people on set who are, either pushing the buttons to make the content play, either in a loop or a cued to specific action. And then I'm just, I oversee kind of all of that. For playback on the screen, one of my rules is it visually interesting to help tell the story? Is it plausible in the world of that it's, being shown in, and logical? If somebody's interacting with it, is the logic there? It's not just a bunch of shit flying on screen.
Right.
That's, somebody's clicking through or going, oh, well, it's so-and-so and so-and-so. And you're like, how the hell do you get that from a bunch of flying shapes? I want people to be very clear that this means this and this means that. And the one thing that I always know when I'm successful is, let's get a close-up on that, and let's get push in for a tight close-up. Then I know I've been very successul, because I help tell the story rather than the character just going, oh, well, we're at 24%. I'm like, well, let's show them that and, give them, some kind of gauge. And certain projects like Star Trek Picard, I was brought in very early, so that I got to work with the art department and the designers to help not only incorporate specific types of newer technologies and displays into the consoles they were building, or saying, this is, here's this cool curved type of OLED that we could use, or here's this transparent display technology, and here's what's involved in making it work into a console. And here's how we have to worry about the wiring, and then we have to feed the image to it, and yada, 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 yada. And it's like, oh, and don't forget, give me vents so that the thing can, when the little console heats up, it doesn't overheat, and yada, yada, yada. Yeah. So there's just so many different aspects.
So many challenges.
Yes.
I was going to ask you, just in terms of like your credits, you have a huge list of credits. You've got Star Trek and Steve Jobs, but then you've got things like The Internship, right, and Hall Pass.
Mm-hmm.
Like these are hugely different styles. Is one harder than the other? Is one more fun? Is it great to, every few weeks or a few months to do something completely different? Or
they all have both. Well, almost all of them have some component of fun. Not all of them are fun, but there are usually some components of fun.
Work is still work, right?
Yes. But certainly there are some that are very much more rewarding and much more challenging technically, which is one of the things I enjoy, is, figuring out how do we, make this thing that's being required or asked for, or bringing them something really cool that we can do. So yes, there are some, like Star Trek Picard was kind of a culmination of a lot of, multiple decades of my skills, and getting to, kind of be a part of the entire process, not just at the end where we're like, oh yeah, here's the monitor, put something cool on it. It's from, hey guys, this is really cool. Here's a cool thing we can do, and then
make it
the entire process,
the whole thing. But it was interesting to read one of the articles about your work with Nemesis, right? I'm imagining you had a lot of time, but there was a little bit of tension there, right, between
yes,
and the stuff creating and the resolution,
right,
where you wanted to push it. Did you not have? Can you talk a little bit about that? And did you or did you not have that sort of thing pop up this go around?
Back on Nemesis, where I was brought in to do the playback, and at the time, Michael Okuda was in charge of his whole graphics team that was at Paramount because they were doing the TV series. I was fortunate that I had worked with a couple of the people who were involved in producing Nemesis on previous projects. So they had brought me in because they knew that it was a pretty big show. I did get to do a lot of stuff that I wanted to do and push things further than Mike Okuda was wanting to do initially, because he was used to doing everything with backlit panels and then a little cutout for a 19-inch CRT at 640 by 480 resolution. And I'm like, okay, well, we have LCD panels now, we have plasma displays, we have projection. And so I was just always pushing for things that, would allow us to do more. And, so there
more
was
futuristic on Star Trek.
More futuristic on Star Trek, yes, which, I always, as I had mentioned in an article recently, I always found kind of a little weird that on a futuristic show, they were so against using the future, the newer technologies.
Sure.
So Mike, was frustrated that he would have to have his team rebuild all these things at higher resolutions and at much faster paces in certain cases than, he wanted to do, because I was like, well, we're shooting this, tomorrow, I need this thing. He's like, well, they're going to have to wait. I'm like, yeah, I can't tell the director that it's not going to be ready. So, I had to manipulate the system a little, play around. We had our push, there was push and pull. And one of the things that I had to do was in order to kind of get rid of the CRTs that he wanted to use, was in the bridge of the ship on Nemesis. The entire thing was built on a giant gimbal with ramrods, that hydraulic things so that when the ship got hit, the entire thing would shake. Mm. And I was like,
more realistic than the actors,
Yes,
leading
instead of doing this, yes. So that helped me in saying, listen, the CRTs are not going to withstand this constant hitting and without breaking, and then and also they're heavier and yada yada yada. So that one little thing helped me kind of then get the LCD displays in there. And at the time, LCD displays were not great off angle, and they weren't as bright as what we are currently dealing with. And so there were some areas where I was like, okay, can we just make sure we shoot a little over the top and not so much from the side, because you're losing. So there was a little working with the director, with the DPs, directors of photography, and the camera department to say, let's just pull over a little on the top. And in most cases, everything looked pretty good. It still looks very good. There's a few shots in that film today that I'm still a little like, I wish I had some other display technology for this particular thing. And then moving forward to Picard, which was, about 21 years later, a lot of the stuff that we wanted to do in the past, we could now do practically. One of the big new technologies was the transparent OLEDs from LG. And that was one of the first things that we actually wanted to purchase, because they were build to order units. And it was an 8 to 12 week build time. Yeah. So that when I was hired, it's kind of jumping all over here, but when I was hired in March of 2020, Dave Blass had asked me to, look into these, and I looked at what they were using on the other show on Discovery, and they were using Planar's displays, OLED displays. Anyway, so it was an older model. I found these newer models, but it was going to be 12 weeks, and it was going to be, about $106,000 to buy 6 of them. And we kept asking the producers, we're like, we got to order these if we want to, have them in time. And that kind of got pushed off. And we actually, on May 1st of 2020, we kind of shut down when the work from home orders didn't allow us to start building, because they were like, we have everything ready, we're going to start building, but we don't want to spend this money yet until we know we can actually start. So the differences between back then and now with Okuda was that Okuda was brought in as a consultant this time rather than in charge of the graphics. And so I brought in Twisted Media, who actually had done season 1, and then I brought them back because I got hired for season 2 and 3. And I'm like, okay, well, these guys obviously know their Trek stuff, and they have great playback software. I just need to kind of increase the quality and the resolution and yada, 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 all these other things. And then Okuda was brought in to work with them, which they were thrilled about because, Okuda's a legend. And then I had also brought in an additional graphics consultant, designer, and who was a friend of mine who does a lot of very high-end stuff. And so I was trying to kind of push, the specific look and design. With today's modern OLED displays, we can now shoot things, you have a screen that looks phenomenal at almost any angle, is bright enough in almost any situation. You can get translucent versions of them, which you can do things that, again, we used to have to do in post-production, like in the movie Date Night, which I did many years ago. Mark Wahlberg has a 3 clear displays in front of him, and then he's doing this whole interactive thing. That was all done in post, which I oversaw, but I was also there on set to say, do this over here and do this over there. Mm-hmm. Now, and that took months to kind of design this whole interface to match what his actions were. Now it's like we have the graphic there that they can actually look at and interact with, which saves us a lot of time and also looks a hell of a lot better.
Looks more real. Yeah.
Okay, Don, I have 5 questions, so go away. Okay. um, okay,
I'll allow you to speak now, Trevor. Go ahead.
I literally have 5 questions. I want to back up specifically to the hardware before we get to the content.
Sure.
If I understand correctly, first thing is that the monitors are on screen. They have to have a refresh rate that matches the frame rate of the camera, right? Do they have to have a color science that matches the color of the sensor or the film stock? Like, do you have to start? Do you have to start
okay,
there?
so two different things. So the refresh rate is more specific to CRT, so the older tube monitors. And so in that case, we needed a monitor that would refresh at 48 hertz, which is twice of 24. And then we had a sync box. We had a standards converter, which we would take our signal, put it through this device, run it at 48 hertz. It would have a Genlock capability so that we would sync that to the camera. And then we would look through the camera. You'd have to pull the film. You'd look through the camera, and then you'd have a little sensor adjustment. So you'd watch the roll bar, which you would see on the old CRTs.
Yep.
You dial it down to the bottom of the frame and just park it there. Right. And then hopefully that would lock there. And then if you had multiple cameras, they all had to be, connected together with the cables. So they were all gen locked. And then if you had multiple monitors, then all the monitors, even if there are different feeds, then all of them would then need to sync so that they're all refreshing at the same rate.
Right.
So yes, that's a situation with CRTs and plasmas. Not as much now with OLED and LCD. It's not completely gone. There is still some need depending on the type of technology. I can go into details of that later, but for the most part, LCDs and OLEDs are okay.
Do you dial in the
yes,
color?
The color temperatures? Yes, the color temperature is done.
I know the Genesis had a very, very specific, very, very specific color, or how it rendered colors to it. So my guess is that you would have to adjust per camera, right?
It depends. Yes. So in the past, we'll just go to Nemesis. On Nemesis, we were using, we custom built these control boxes that was VGA, and then it broke out to 5-wire, and you would have an RGB dial on the unit. And so you could adjust with an actual physical button the color temperature to get to 3200 or close to 3200, which is the color temperature that they typically are shooting at for tungsten indoors. Then we also had software called a tool called Gamma, and there's been several others over the years that we use that, again, is kind of individual from the computer to the monitor. The problem was if you had multiple monitors getting the same feed from that one computer, you would have to match all the monitors, to the same so that they looked the same, which wasn't always easy because sometimes you're using different displays that are all getting the same feed. What we have now and what we did on Picard was Twisted Media, again, who the company that did our graphics, also has this amazing playback software. And one of the abilities is real-time adjustments for brightness, contrast, color temperature, and you can, individually tweak it. And the beauty is that we can be in our control room watching the monitor, the live feed monitor in our control room, and watch and adjust and see how it looks and kind of eyeball it pretty closely. Then we'll go into either onto set or into the DIT tent, the digital technicians tent, because they have, the color accurate OLED displays. And we can see, is this too bright? Is this too dark? Is the color temperature off? And then I can walk either to the guys, go, guys, bring down this, adjust that. And, we can do it in real time. Back in the old days when it was actual film and sync, sometimes you would look through the video assist monitor. Wasn't always an accurate, was rarely an accurate telling of if everything was in sync.
Right.
And then often you wouldn't know, how the exposures were, color temperatures. You could kind of get pretty close, but we'd have to go to dailies the next day, and at lunch, and you're like, oh, okay, all right, we got to bring these down a little bit, or these have to come up a little bit next time. And so that was where it was very important to have playback engineers who were like just masters at color and exposure, and could balance all these monitors. And back in the day when it was all CRTs, NTSC, never the same color, trying to match a room full of CRTs was challenging as hell. When we
I bet.
When we did Deep Impact, there we built a real working MSNBC television studio on stage, and I had, I don't know, maybe 40 CRTs, banks of them across the newsroom, and they all had to look good. When we did, and that was challenging, but a little easier because those were all, high-end Sony production monitors. Then when we did Anchorman 2, there we had about 125 CRTs, and we were recreating a 1980 television studio that was supposed to be brand new. And, we shot this like maybe 10 years ago or something like that. And trying to find that many period CRTs was challenging. Luckily, we were able to kind of pull together a lot. And then we also built bezels that we put over monitors to make them look like older displays. But there we had to like pull the covers off all these old CRTs and get into the little pots and try to like pull the, adjust the sizes because they start to scale weird over time.
Right.
And the colors go all wonky, and, you could never really get perfect with all this older, because, this one might have 1,200 hours and this one might have 60 hours. And, you have old components, and it's crazy. I mean, I could do a whole podcast just on the technology and all the different crazy stuff we had to do on Anchorman 2, because it was just nuts.
Playing off that, you've worked with auteurs like Danny Boyle and Steven Soderbergh, one of my favorite filmmakers. You've worked with craftspeople like Stuart Baird and Mimi Letter.
You want to comment on that one?
and Mimi Letter. I mean, Stuart Baird. I mean, his editing skills. Well, I was just gonna say he's one of the great editors.
Yes. Yeah. Not who you want to direct Star Trek. You typically not a great idea to get a first-time director who hates Star Trek to direct a Star Trek.
So yeah, I didn't even know that. And then you're working on Picard, where there are multiple directors, and Frakes, who is a fantastic TV director. Yeah. How do you work with all? I mean, I know they're different projects, but how do you work with all of these voices and their different approaches?
A lot of it is with great enthusiasm. And showing them what we can do for them, and giving them the ability to do things that they didn't even think of when they were writing, or not writing, but breaking down their scripts to shoot. And so part of it depends on kind of where we are in the process as far as when I'm brought on to the project. Because, as I mentioned earlier, one of the things I really enjoy doing is helping tell the story better. And, finding cool ways to do things that, is not something that most people would think of is how to, for example, on Solaris, we were using a variety of different holographic projection material so that we could basically float displays in air instead of doing it as a post effect. So early on in that film, George Clooney's character is in his apartment, and on his TV, which is this floating screen, or is this futuristic newscast with all these different things happening. We built that all in an online editing session for over a weekend, that whole graphic, and then floated a piece of this special rear projection acrylic, and then hid the projector so that they could do those shots. And then also in the spaceship in Clooney's quarters, there's a monitor, which is again like a piece of this acrylic, which we basically cut a hole in the back of the set below, so the displays on the desk, and we cut a hole towards the floor and shined the projector up, and then kind of masked it. And that was before we had projection mapping software, so it was trickier, and because you're keystoning and doing all this other stuff to try to make the image
bend over backwards to fit it.
I had just, when I did Solaris, I had just finished Nemesis, where we had done other cool stuff with projection, where we had taken this rear projection material and cut it and curved it. And so on the Riemann bridge, on the lower consoles, there's these kind of wraparound displays that were all done practical with projection. And then also in the Riemann bridge, there were the upper displays, upper consoles. I had gotten these 1,000 lumen laser, they weren't laser, but projectors, and built them into the console, and they shone up and hit a 50-50 mirror, and half the image went, and it was a chromatic coded mirror, so that it split the color. So part of the image in color went up onto the aliens' faces, and another part bounced forward onto a piece of curved rear projection material. So the front piece was green, a green graphic, and the part that was up on the aliens' faces was this kind of pinkish hue, same graphic, but just different looks. And that was all done, again, practically. Nobody from the art department said, hey, can you build this thing that does this? I was like, hey, we can do this thing, which will look really cool. And then, I work with them and come up with these cool things. So that,
so you got to keep giving the directors more candy, more things
to
play with, and they're happy. That's the key, right?
Yeah. So you want to, and with Danny Boyle on Jobs.
I was just going to say, in the case of Steve Jobs, your work, I mean, I saw the film a few times. I really enjoyed it. Your work is actually part of the drama.
Yeah.
Right. And now you're working with the timing. I'm guessing now you're working off the timing of Fassbender and Jeff Bridges, because if they're not reacting to it, it's symbolically in unison with their performance. Yes, no?
Well, yeah, I mean, in yes and no. So, for example, when we did 3 different keynotes, because we had, 3 different years that were represented, the original Macintosh release in 84, and then the next release in 1988, and then the iMac in 98. And each one of those actually contained the original parts of the original material from those keynotes, which again is a whole other story of how I got all that material. But yes, those were built using, ironically, coincidentally, Apple's Keynote software, which Jobs had done for keynotes. And so that they were basically a queued slideshow or a queued presentation, so that as they were, we knew on this line, you go to here, and this line, you go to there. And so that, it tied to the script, and to, what their dialogue was. So yes, the performances were, it's kind of a give and take. So sometimes they're responding to what we're bringing up on screen, or sometimes we're responding to their line, which cues us to bring up the next piece.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought your work in that one definitely played in with the storytelling. Like that was your job as storytelling.
Yes.
I'm not saying the others are not, but that one I felt the biggest impact on. I remember talking to my friends afterwards about it. It really adds to the drama.
Thank you. And the project itself had a lot of meaning to me. One, I grew up in Sunnyvale, and right next to Cupertino, and was there during the whole starting of Apple. Jobs and Wozniak both were students like 10 years before me at my high school. I had the same electronics teacher as them, and the same computer teacher. I took my first computer class with the IBM punch cards, in 1978, I think. And then the moving on into the launch of the Macintosh at Flint Center, at the back of Flint Center, and where we actually filmed parts of the movie when like Jobs is showing his daughter the Macintosh for the first time. That's where I went to film school, in those classrooms, like 25 years or so before that. So it was a bit of a mind F, because here I am, and I'd worked in the film department as a TA for about 4 years as well. And so, these were cement stairs that you had to walk 4 stories up, this little cement corridor. I had painted numbers on every step going up, so everybody knew it's 78 steps or whatever it was. And those numbers were still there, so many years. I had graduated in 84 or 85, something like that, from there. And, the film department had subsequently moved to a different place on campus, but this stairwell still contained all the, the painted numbers that I had put there.
That's really
and the
cool.
Production designer had them covered up with waterproof paint, supposedly, because he didn't want them in the shot. I was so pissed. But the working on that was cool, because I was able to bring the department chairman, who was semi-retired, Zach Elisha, I brought him to the set, and I brought him to our production office up in South San Francisco. And I introduced him to Danny Boyle, and, it was a really cool moment to be able to introduce someone who had such an, impact early on in my, learning filmmaking, to here I am, all these years later, and I'm working professionally. And then also to work in the same building was just, and be on the same campus as, I'd gone and graduated from. And one of the cool things we got to do while we were shooting there was, during one of our lunches, we went to the new film department, and we did a seminar for the current film students. And so myself, Don Henderson, who was also one of the filmmakers on the show, who also was a De Anza graduate and friend of mine from way back then, also was there working on it. And we were talking to all the students, and then, halfway through, Danny Boyle came in, and then, sat down, and, the students were blown away, because, there's 100 students getting to sit with Danny Boyle, telling them stories and things like that. So it was a really cool, opportunity to kind of give back to the place that it helped start my career.
That's great. Don, I'll allow you to talk now.
I was to say, Trevor, this is why I've been teaching part-time for all these years. So maybe one day one of my students will make it and do something nice for me, just like that. So this is it keeps me going after all these years. Could you maybe talk about a little bit about the unique stresses of your job? Because, you talked about having to create things or invent things or like up to the last second,
Yeah.
like that's pretty stressful. I mean, that seems
Oh,
to
yeah.
be, right up there. Like, how do you manage it? Does it go bad? Is it old hat at this point? Yeah.
The stress of it is, there's always stress involved in anything that you're doing on a set. And, the example I always give is when people are doing, I'm like, if you're at work and you're in a meeting and you have to do a PowerPoint presentation and something doesn't work right, that could be a little stressful. I'm like, okay, imagine you're having to do that, but you're on a set with all these expensive actors, highly paid actors, an entire film crew.
Where time is money. Yeah.
And 50 extras, and something stops working. And you have to tell them, hold on, this isn't working. We can't shoot right now. And you have a first assistant director coming as you're trying to figure out what's going on. How much longer? How much longer? How much longer? And you like, well, give me like 5 minutes to, see what's going on. Okay. And, 5 minutes goes by and they're like, okay, are we ready? And you're like, not quite yet. Hold on. They're like, should we send the actors back to their trailers? Okay. So that certainly happened more than once.
They'll actually ask you, should we send them back? Wow.
Because they, actors don't want to freaking just stand there while they're waiting, because is it 3 minutes? Is it 20 minutes? Is it,
yeah.
And that's an expensive wait.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of pressure. And, if it's a little something, you're like, okay, well, that one monitor is just going to be off, or we're going to just turn it away from camera. But if it's something in a newsroom where all of a sudden, I mean, this happened on Deep Impact, where all of a sudden we were getting noise and interference on a bunch of the displays. And one of my engineers starts like ripping stuff apart in the control room. I'm like, holy guys, and we're like, okay, we're going to need a little time. You don't want to be the guy that's the one who's responsible for the production falling behind, or not making their day. And some of the most stressful times of my life have been, when things are not working properly and you're trying to make them work. Or the other great one is like when you have your computer and you've set everything for the particular scene, and it's, you just have to hit play, but it's not saving. It won't save. And you're like, just don't crash. And, you're just hoping that you don't have to, something, it doesn't reboot in the middle of something or overheat. So yeah, there's always now,
is it the stress, like, that you might cause, production to be behind and all that money, but do you get like the 80s coming in yelling? Is that like, does that not happen? Does that happen? Or
no, that certainly happens.
Yeah.
You might get initially one of the lower tiered PAs or ADs come in with their walkie and they're like, what's going on? Or you get on the radio, guys, what's going on? But then there's always the thing where it's like it escalates. I mean, we had a thing on Picard where on the first episode of season 3, where we literally had less than a week to convert the entire Stargazer into the Titan with all new graphics. Shooting on that first day and not having everything quite ready, and the director getting very frustrated, which understandably, but we were spread so thin because we were doing that, and we had 2 other sets that were going that, and the graphics team just could not manage to keep up with all the requests and the new stuff. It's like there were like little holes in the consoles where there was like black where, they didn't finish like certain pieces or something wasn't ready. And, the director like called the producer to come and talk to me. And I'm like, we're doing the best we can. I'm not one's building the thing. And I'm like, the graphics company will provide us all the elements to be put in post at their cost. So they've already agreed to that because they know they're behind. So, it's like once I'm like, guys, this is what we're dealing with. Here's, it's nobody's fault per se. This is just, there's just too much to do at the time.
Well, along those lines, too much to do. Is it the fact that there's not enough budget? Everyone's trying to rush everything out. Like, what is the ultimate reason for that kind of falling behind? Is it too many requests and not enough time? Is it understaffed?
It was just, well, that was a schedule situation where they're trying to do that they have certain requirements where maybe there's actors that need to be someplace else, and so they need to get their stuff shot. The actors are much more important than, are the graphics guys or the playback guys going to have this ready? They're going to do it. We know what they're going to have to do it. We kind of are like lower on the totem pole there. So, in certain shows, we actually get to go, hey guys, this is too much. I need at least a day to do, or 5 days or whatever. There were certainly situations where the graphics team could not keep up with the requests of, and especially on that one bridge, because we had 37 or 38 unique feeds to all the different displays that all needed different graphics. So it's not like on a normal show where you might have 4 or 5 displays that you have to build. Here you needed, there was a ton of new stuff, and it's all story specific. And you have certain directors who are much more demanding of, I want, when this particular cue comes or this line comes, I want something on the screen to show that. Whereas another director is like, that's all right, I'm going to just be on their face. You don't have to build me anything. So you'll all of a sudden it's like, instead of 4 cues that we have to build, there's 15. And it's not just on this display, it's on that display and that display and that display. And these are all different, and they all have to be built. They all have to have cue points. And, or you have a director go, I'm not really sure. It could be here or here. And you're like, okay, that's like not just a simple thing where you go, it's a different display. It's a different resolution. It's a different size, a different shape. So there was a lot of that on Picard. There was a lot of last minute stuff because you also are getting new scripts.
You're doing the next show, the episode. Yeah.
Or you have a director who changes his mind or their mind, and they're like, I want it there. And then you get to the set and they're like, can we put it over there instead? And you're like, I'm going to need let me call my graphics team, because the graphics team wasn't there on, they were in Chicago. So we had to get
set dressers there that can.
Yeah.
So how do you manage, when you're in the midst of production, how do you manage that kind of intense pressure all the time? I mean, you're working through lunch or you're just, everyone's just trying to get through stuff. How do you just get through and then?
I mean, the long days too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, luckily it's, for the most part, it's gotten better with the long days because of the new union rules, at least on the shows that I've been on. But yeah, I mean, I've certainly been on shows. I mean, even when we did Nemesis, we were doing 16, 18-hour days, and it got so bad that one of the Paramount executives came to set and sat on set to make sure that at 12 hours, they were wrapping up. And on those types of shows, I'll get back to the stress level, but it's like you get to lunch after 6 hours and then you look and you're like, hey, another 12 hours, we get to go home. Dealing with that stress kind of varies depending on the project and who you're working with. As I've gotten a little older and more mature, I've learned to not, most of the time, to try to not, take it out on my crew or other people, to, just level with them. It's like, okay, guys, here's our situation. We really can't mess this up. We got to deal with this, and let's figure out how to deal with it. But, of course, there's always times where it's overwhelming and it's a lot to deal with. Luckily, I'm pretty good at letting kind of emotions, once they're past, I can kind of let it go, which, is sometimes good and sometimes bad, because you don't always remember necessarily like, oh shit, I should really avoid this thing. I mean, again, I've gotten much better as I've gotten older. My ADHD, I've kind of learned to work with, to kind of go, okay, I need to make sure this is done properly ahead of time, so that we're not waiting until the last second and then dealing with this huge stress. So that's one of the things that I've done is learned a lot of things to do to try to lower the potential for stress. And again, like, equipment failures where you'll have, you make sure that you have 3 different ways to do something technically, so that, you have fail safe. And this just happened literally a week ago. I was on a job on a commercial, and we had rented a 40,000 lumen projector that arrived late and then had initial problems that we finally got working, fired it up, and then it was glitching all over the place. And we didn't have time. They're like, well, we're going to bring you a new one. I'm like, I don't have time. The crew's already out there. So luckily I had brought some of my other projectors as a replacement, just in case, because I was like, okay, I don't want to be relying on this thing. So that's one of the things that I've learned to do to kind of, reduce stress level and not be able to, because you just don't want to be the guy who goes, sorry, this is not working. We can't shoot this today.
Just before we did this recording, I was listening to a podcast where they were going in depth about how, with all the details, how difficult it is to maintain a marriage and a family in this industry. And they went into, with regards to scheduling and, having young kids and they just, and being out of sync with them, even if you're just away for a month or even a few weeks, and how that really affects the relationship and stuff like that. I believe you mentioned to us that you have family members that are that are marriage and family therapists.
Yeah, my wife.
Yeah. So
yes,
having a partner does that, I imagine that makes this easy. It makes this easier to maintain. Maybe not, but I imagine you do see in the industry a lot of people struggling with having a family, and that has to have an effect on top of the stresses of 18-hour days.
Yeah.
I mean, that has to lead to some real deep struggles, I imagine.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've had this discussion with my wife over the years as well about, it's tough to go from your job where you're respected, people do what you ask them to do, you get praise, and then you come home and it's like, the kids don't want to listen to what you're asking them to do. And, everybody's tired because they've been doing their own stuff. And it's like, can we clean up the house? And, nobody wants to hear you complain about stuff. And and so you kind of go from this, it's like this world, and especially with production where it's, it's not like a normal 9-to-5 job. You're right in the intense, environment, and you're doing these like incredible things oftentimes. And, and now with like a Star Trek, you get like fan adoration and, all this other positives. And people, really finding what you do fascinating, and then dealing with, then you got to come back to reality and live as a normal person in a house, and changes your, you kind of, it's been very difficult at times where, you get angry and frustrated because it's like, this one place I'm treated this way, and in this other place I'm treated, at home, it's like not, you don't get that.
You're a mere mortal at home.
Yes, exactly. And and it's a tired, you're tired and don't want to necessarily have to deal with all these other issues at home. And so, yeah, there is a definite level of understanding and stress that is involved in this. And we still deal with that today. I mean, it's not, we've had our struggles as any family I'm sure has with this type of environment, working in this type of environment. And I have a very creative family. So everybody has their own like things that they're doing. My son, who's, in his 27, 28, he likes LARPing. So live action role playing. So he's building props. We have our 3D printer and he's building stuff, for that. And he's off, in Northern California doing his LARPing thing. And when you're doing the things that you love, it's a whole other, versus like, oh, can you put the dishes away and do,
yes,
that's not very exciting for, my wife's an artist. I mean, has a therapy degree, an art therapy degree, but she's now doing art full time. And so she's now in her whole studio and, and again, it's like everybody, I've encouraged, because of what I've done, I've encouraged everybody to kind of follow your passions and do what you really enjoy, because it's so great to be able to do that. And it fills a part of your soul to enjoy what you do and to, get pleasure in sharing that with others. But then the reality of doing real life stuff kind of gets in the way of that oftentimes. And that's where there is definitely struggle, and everybody, trying to learn to deal with everybody's ADHD or whatever their weaknesses and strengths are. And so, yeah, I wish I had better answers for how to deal with all
those were great answers.
Yeah.
And it's like, I will get the question of, like, what do you like to do in your spare time? And I'm like, I don't know. It's hard for me to I like doing fixing things, around the house, because that's like very task oriented, and I'm a very task oriented person. So it's hard for me to go, let's just go and hang out and go to a movie. It's like, I don't, it's like, I have to disconnect sometimes from that part of my being of wanting to get things done.
Right.
Which fills that, that part of me, that ADHD kind of whatever.
But are you diagnosed with ADHD?
Oh yeah. I've from a very, very, very early age, my mom had done her thesis paper on it. So, when I was in grade school, it was very obvious that, I had what they called learning disabled, which is what it used to be called, hyperactive learning disabled, and then I got to go to once a week where you got to go to a different program at a different school for the gifted kids. And that's actually where I first got to, they had like a little TV studio at this school with like 3 cameras and a little control room switcher thing, where I first got to actually do that back in grade school. So, having those resources back then and being on medication way back then, in the 60s. And so I've had to deal with that my whole life.
It's amazing that you had the resources because I've only been diagnosed with it in the past few years. And I'm in my late 40s, and even coming up in the 80s and 90s, it wasn't really talked about that much. I mean, it was being talked about more, but it still wasn't talked about that much.
Yeah. I mean, I was fortunate in that my mom was, a marriage family therapist who was into the transactional, the TA for teens and TA for tots. And, and we used to have encounter groups that she was involved in the 70s. And, so I grew up in that kind of environment. My dad was a aerospace engineer at Lockheed, and my mom was, this therapist. So they always had their little struggles as well, because different personalities. So yeah, I mean, I was kind of used to that growing up. I was very fortunate in that, I was diagnosed very early and got, help with a lot of those things. Not that it solved any of those troubles, but it actually, at least I had some accommodations
Right.
to work with me on those things and not feel like I was something wrong with me, but that it was something to be dealt with.
Right.
What has been so far the highlight of your career where the work that you did and the story and the final output, the final film or show married together and really worked and fired on all cylinders? What have you been the most proud of so far?
Definitely the stuff we've done most recently on Picard, I think is, kind of the pinnacle of what we've been able to accomplish because of a number of factors, the amount of displays on the one set and the impact that it had and the drama that it added to the story and the technology, pushing the look of everything to a level that, was just next level, essentially.
Yeah.
That's certainly, when I was doing it, I was like, God, this is kind of like a dream job because I don't know how I'm going to do better than this with, getting to do all these different aspects and getting the respect of, from everything from working with, the set designers, the art directors, the construction department, the effects department, the props department, and everybody kind of, once they saw what we were doing, listening to what I wanted to do and getting to like bring things to them that, again, that they hadn't even thought of.
Right.
Just as an example, when we did the District 6 set, and they were just looking at doing stuff on the ground level. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to do projection mapping above everything, and I did kind of a previs with Photoshop of like, here's what it's going to look like. And then doing it and them just, being blown away. And that's one of the things that I just really just kind of fills me with pride is being able to do, kind of come up with those visuals and achieve them and just bring things to another level.
I thought the season was such an accomplishment and you all did such amazing work. And from the fan perspective of me, I just absolutely loved it. Every week it was just gorgeous and fun. And did you happen to see the last two on I went to see into New York to see it on IMAX, and I thought that was
did not get to see the
so
last
fun.
Two on IMAX. I saw the first two on IMAX at the premiere.
Oh wow.
Oh yeah.
Which that was it was so hard to get into that. Mm-hmm. The only reason I was able to do it was I worked with the Paramount Archives person who had Beverly's cryo chamber from episode 1 of season 3, when she gets sick and she's in the chamber. Yeah. So I
was on display or something outside the premiere. Was that?
Well, it was in the party after across at the Hollywood Roosevelt. They had set pieces and props and costumes, and so he brought that in. Well, I'd hooked him up with the electrician or the fixtures guy, Derek, who was in charge of fixtures on Picard, who was luckily also doing Quantum Leap at the time, and so Derek and one of his guys went down to the where the archives were, hooked up all the lights so that it all lit up and stuff like that. And then I procured the 2 iPads and got the graphics running so that they, it was active and had all the little EKG stuff and, so it looked really cool when it was there. And the archive guy actually gave me his ticket.
Oh, wow.
So I could go in to see the thing. And then I sat with Liz and Dave, and Dave was like, look, Dave had Liz was Dave's +1, and he had to really fight to get a ticket. And he was trying to for weeks was trying to get our crew to get tickets to this thing. And they would not give us, and we're like, really? The crew couldn't go see so it was only by, us kind of, twisting some arms and figuring out little.
So was it just actors and producers, and that was the.
It was it was mostly the actors, producers, and fans, because it was and they actually had an overflow theater even, so there would have been enough for other people. Yeah. So there were some of our other casts. I mean, some of our other crew, like Jeff and props was there because for whatever reason he got invited. Like it was like there was a handful of people that got invited and other ones who kind of connived their way in. And
you're like, props gets in.
Yeah. But he had worked all 3 seasons, and so he had other connections.
Oh, he only did 2.
Yeah. So yeah, I did get to see it on the big screen, and
that must have been nice. Yeah,
that was phenomenal. And the other cool story about that is that was the theater that I saw the original Star Trek the Motion Picture in when it first came out.
Oh, get out.
So
that's my favorite Star Trek film. Don and I fight about it.
This is not about you,
time.
Trevor. This is about his experience here.
I love it so much.
Okay, but this is about his experience. Wow, so you saw the original there, and there you are.
I saw the original there, yeah. And I also saw the original and Superman in that theater too.
Oh, yeah. I love that film too.
Yeah. But, awesome. With the score, that was you still get chills.
Thank you again so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Sure. Not like there's a lot of other things going on.
Oh God!
I'm not saying we're taking advantage of it, but
we should. I mean, it's a great time.
When we were all locked down, and I was teaching a course at, and everyone was locked down. I just basically was teaching a class online, and I'm like, what am I going to do teaching film production, a production class over Zoom? So I just contacted every connection I had, and I just had all these people out your way who couldn't do anything, and they would just come in and guest my class. And I feel like that class learned the most because we just had it every week, a different person come in and talk about the industry for them.
That's so amazing to have, that. I mean, I remembered, as a student when you have those opportunities to meet the real people doing.
Yeah,
that's great.
It's better than anything. Yeah.
Thanks again.
Awesome. Thank you,
Todd. This was fantastic. It really was, and thanks for being so open.
Yeah.
So,
anytime.
That's an outro.
Yeah. Eat something first with your mouth full, and let's start the outro.
All right, that was an awesome interview, wasn't it, Trevor? How about this?
Go get.
All right, welcome back, everyone. That was awesome to talk to Todd. He was great.
Fantastic interview. I genuinely love technical deep dives, and his job sounds like, I think on most sets you're juggling, the craftspeople are juggling a lot, but my gosh, that seems, for me specifically, that is overwhelming, and I have nothing but great respect for him.
Speaking of people I have no respect for, what's new with your life, Trevor? Anything going on coming up, or are you just looking forward to the next podcast?
Oh my God,
Are we referring to ourselves as the podcast?
I'm so looking forward to the next pod. Well, I finished 2 shows recently that has nothing to do with this podcast. I finished The Diplomat on Netflix, which is one of the best shows of the year.
Great show. Reminds me of a faster paced West Wing in a way. Yeah.
And I finished the recent new kind of run of Justified, and I really enjoyed that. And I watched a Hong Kong drama from 1991 called Center Stage by Stanley Kwan with Maggie Chung. It's one of the best biopics I've ever seen in my life. Nobody cares about this stuff, but I'm still going to go to bat for it.
Well, that's interesting, Trevor, and I mean it.
You couldn't care less. I couldn't get you to watch one episode of Evangelion, so shut up.
I've watched 2.
No, you haven't. I know that for a fact.
I even know. Please, in one of our deleted scenes from our podcast that we're keeping to ourselves for now, I gave you a quiz and you didn't even know, you forgot the name Nerf as the organization.
It's Nerve, you moron. It's Nerve.
Nerves.
Oh my gosh, just end the podcast already. Let's end it on this
Let's
note.
end it now. Well, I am looking forward to next week. We have cinematographer Jeremy Benning, who the sci-fi world will know for his work for all the seasons of The Expanse. He's done The Boys. He's done a ton of documentary, National Geographic. He's got Netflix shows going. So I am very much looking forward to talking to him.
His resume is what I would describe intimidating. That man has done a lot of work, and he is very, very versatile with his craft. I'm very excited for this interview.
And with that, we'll leave you alone. Don't forget to send us feedback. Well, I'm leaving you alone. You're laughing.
Are you telling you're leaving the audience alone? Or are you leaving me alone?
You alone.
Okay.
Yeah, you have to maniacal laugh. Like for those of you, like I'm watching Trevor. I'm in a brightly lit room. I'm talking to Trevor, and he's in this dark room with like a cat like lurking in the background, like he's Dr. Evil or something.
Absolutely.
So it gets better. It gets better. What are you flossing while we're filming?
I'm using a Proxa brush and I'm cleaning my teeth.
Oh, I've discovered though that Trevor really hates when I start nibbling on nuts during our podcast.
Yeah, because you're not supposed to friggin' eat during the podcast. Oh God, please, that you're taking out. That is disgusting.
Keeping it in.
People do not like when you eat. It makes
Aren't the kids all into ASMR now? That's not a thing anymore? Or are we past that? Yeah. All right, no-win scenario podcast at gmail.com. And subscribe to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all your podcast ventures and venues. With that, thanks for listening.
Bye, everyone. Love you. Bye, Don. Hate you.
I'm going to cut you out, Trevor, by the way.
Bye.
No one cares if you say goodbye.
Bye.
Keep saying goodbye and then keep cutting it out. Goodbye.
In today's world, mental health is everyone's concern. If you or someone you know is in crisis, please use these resources. For U.S. listeners, call 1-800-950-6264 or text Helpline, all one word, HELPLINE, to 62640 or email helpline@NAMI.org. That's NAMI.org. For our international listeners, please visit suicidestop.com. That's SUICIDESTOP.com.